Welcome to Peninsula Seniors Lecture Series. Sit back, get comfortable, and let's go see what they have for us today.
I'll introduce our program in which we will describe some of the experiences and lessons learned by both city staff of Rancho Palos Verdes and staff of the Trump National Development Group. We have three people with us this morning. First is Mr. Greg Fost, who is the Assistant Planning Director for the City of Rancho Palos Verdes. He's then going to introduce two of the members of the Trump National Organization, the General Manager and the Construction Manager. And so I'm going to turn the program over to Greg Fost. Greg?
Again, my name is Greg Post. A little bit about myself. I've been with the city now as I'm the Deputy Planning Director, and I've been with the city for a little over 11 years. I've been a planner for various jurisdictions in the Southern California region for about 20 years now. And I've been working on the Trump organization, or the Trump project. Some of you may recall it used to be called Ocean Trails before the Trump organization purchased it. I've been working on that project now since it began construction, since the first shovelful of dirt turned over, and so that was about 10 years ago. So I could probably tell you many stories and be here all day and talking about this project and what it's been doing over the last 10 years. But hopefully we're just going to focus on today really about what the project is today, what it looks like today, and then some of the hurdles that we've gone through over the last 10 years and some of the experiences we've had in making sure that this project has still been moving, and describing what the relationship's been like between myself working for the city and the property owners, including the Trump organization. I'd like to first introduce, there's two gentlemen here from the Trump organization, David Conforti and Scott Yarnell, and maybe if I can have them come up and they can say a little brief statement of what they do for the Trump organization.
Good morning. My name's Scott Yarnell, and I am a construction manager at Trump National Golf Club. And I have been involved for about 6 years now. I started with the Landslide Repair. We went through with the renovation of the golf course as well. And I'm now responsible for the construction management for the residential component at the project. I'd like to introduce Dave Conforti, General Manager.
Thank you very much. I think my thunder was just stolen. I'm David Conforti. I'm the General Manager out there. I was head professional at Trump National for about 1.5 years. And I was since promoted with Mike Vandergoes's resignation in early January. Very briefly, I am a Virginia Military Institute graduate, served our country for about 8 years as a diplomat overseas with the United States Department of State, and have been in the golf business for about 10 years, most recently with the Trump organization for almost 2 years.
So I think that the format that we're going to do here is kind of a tag team approach. I'm going to pretty much kind of go through this program and what it's been like working on this project, and they're going to interject from here and there. I want to first give you set the stage on a little bit of the project background. The project originally back in 1992 is when the city improved the entitlements for this project. Then it was Ocean Trails, owned by Ocean Trails LP, which were the Zuckermans actually were the owners of that company. And some of you may be familiar with the Zuckermans, who've built many residential projects here on the Hill. At the very beginning or onset of this project, there were a lot of hurdles that this project had to go through in regards to entitlements. Although the city approved the project in June of 1992, it was actually appealed to the city's Coastal Commission, and the Coastal Commission eventually approved the project in April of 1993. Even though it was approved by both the city and the Coastal Commission, a lawsuit was filed against the project, the city, and the Coastal Commission. By the Sierra Club, the California Native Plant Society, the Coastal Conservation Coalition, and Save Our Coastline 2000. That lawsuit, fortunately, there was a settlement agreement that was reached in 1995, thereby now allowing the project to proceed. In 1997 is when grading first started on the project. And today the project, which is 261 acres in its entirety, includes an 18-hole golf course, which is open to the public. which is important because I think it's an important thing to note that that golf course will never be, at least by the Coastal Commission's standards, will never be a private club. It will always be available to the public. It also includes a driving range. The driving range was a recent addition to the project starting in 2005 and 2006. That driving range actually took the place of 16 residential lots, and that was a decision by the Trump organization and really realizing the need for a driving range with this project. There's also a clubhouse with restaurants and a maintenance facility. There's 59 residential home sites with the project on two sides of the project. One side of the project has a final tract map, which means those homes can be sold and developed. And you may have noticed near La Rotunda Drive, 5 of those homes have been constructed, and they're under construction on a few other homes at this moment. There's also some benefits to the public and the city in regards to this project. As it was entitled, there's 3 city parks associated with this project. 2 at the very entrance on either side of the entrance drive of Ocean Trails Drive, and then 1 Founders Park, which is a little over 5 acres, which is on the ocean side of the clubhouse. That is a city park. There's also various public trails throughout the project site that crisscross throughout the trail and through the habitat areas. Public parking, over 65 acres of dedicated habitat preserve on site, as well as 40 acres of off-site habitat preserves that the Trump organization is responsible for maintaining all of that. There's actually 4 affordable housing units on site. If you didn't know that, the affordable housing units actually serve the employees of the Trump organization that make a salary that qualifies them as very low or low-income wage earners. And one thing you may also have known or experienced when this project was being developed was the rerouting of Palos Verdes Drive South. That Palos Verdes Drive South throughout that project area was designed and constructed by the owner of the golf course. The city did not foot that bill, so the owner actually had to pay for that and did all that construction. So I'm not sure if you're aware of that. I'm not sure if you guys have anything to add on the project description or.
Definitely. Thank you, Greg. I'd like to comment on the habitat preserve, and one of the things that the public may not be aware of is the endangered gnatcatchers that were local to our project throughout the restoration of the habitat. We have the pairs of breeding gnatcatchers have grown over the past several years. And it's been a project that's been very positive for those endangered species. And the habitat preserve encompasses about 65 acres. So throughout that entire 65 acres, each year we document new pairs of gnatcatchers.
This project, it's been over. It's been about 10 years since they started construction, and it's been a very important project for the city of Rancho Palos Verdes. It's a very large development project for the city. The city doesn't have these types of projects any longer, although we have Terranea that's currently under construction. And so what I wanted to talk about today was some of the things that at least myself have learned in going through the process of seeing this project being developed and going through the entitlement processing of this project, and working with the Trump organization or the prior owners in getting this project to where it is today, despite some of the stumbling blocks that have occurred over the years, and there have been a few. We're going to focus on a couple of examples of those stumbling blocks and how we've approached these things together. It's kind of interesting when you approach a project like this, kind of have to take a step back and look at from a governmental entity, myself working for the city of Rancho Palos Verdes, and the approach of how do you approach a project like this, which is a very large project. It's very important to the city, very important to the residents, provides many public amenities, yet making sure that the developer also gets what it needs to get moving forward and get the actual project done. So I have always taken the approach that there are regulations that are tied to this project. There are various conditions that need to be implemented, but it's how you implement those conditions, and it's how you work with the property owner in ensuring those conditions get implemented so that hopefully the project moves through smoothly. With that, it's always been the city's philosophy, so to speak, is to work through problems, finding solutions with the developer in a very cooperative manner. Over the past 10 years, we've had many working team meetings that have included ad hoc committees of the City Council that would attend those meetings to try and get things moving faster. Palos Verdes Drive South, for instance, was being constructed right at the time when the change of ownership occurred and the prior owner declared bankruptcy. So what do we have? We have a roadway that's not finished. How do we move forward? The council stepped in and actually we met with the developer at weekly meetings to try and get the project moving forward. So it was a very cooperative approach in getting through many of these stumbling blocks that we've had. I'm going to focus on a couple of examples now. One is when you look at a development project of this size, which is really amazing, when the project was first approved, it was approved with over 650 conditions of approval, meaning that the property owner had to abide by 650 conditions in order to get his occupancy to run the thing, which also these conditions range from anywhere from rerouting PV Drive South to developing public trails, public parks, what the home sites were going to look like, their sizes, and all of those conditions are basically, that's my charge to make sure the developer complies with all of those conditions. So my approach has always been to one, make sure the developer understands what these conditions are and their responsibility, and to keep an open relationship on implementing those conditions. One of the stumbling blocks in doing that naturally was the change in ownership of this project. As I mentioned, the initial property owner was Ocean Trails LP, which filed bankruptcy in 1999 as a result basically of the landslide that occurred on the 18th hole, which we're going to go into a lot more detail. With that came a new owner, which was the bank, and which was brought on a new set of challenges, at least for me and the city, in trying to educate the bank on where this project was, what the city's expectations were, and how those conditions, those 650 conditions, needed to be implemented, and how they need to pursue that. So that meant weekly meetings with the bank development team and ensuring that the project moved forward. Then in 2002, the Trump organization bought the project. Then came a new development team, which was another hurdle for the city in now having to re-educate a new development team on the conditions, where the project stood, what the city's expectations were, and how to move forward. This all occurred, again, when the landslide failed in June of 1999, so that just only exacerbated the situation or the dilemma in trying to keep this project moving forward. I must say, though, I truly believe that it was very fortunate that the Trump organization did pick up this property, for they do have the financial resources to actually keep the project moving forward, and it has been moving forward as a result of that. Since 1992, when the project was first approved, there have been over 36 revisions, major revisions to the project, which have been processed, which also require a cooperative approach between the city and the developer. Those revisions were all mainly revisions that were proposed by the developer in trying to change things, such as putting in a driving range, taking out residential lots, getting approval for their landslide repair. All of those revisions take a lot of time and a lot of cooperation between the city and the developer. So I just you can see I'm stressing how important that has been over the last 10 years, that relationship between the city and the owners to keep this project moving forward. We're now going to focus on the landslide repair and what occurred and kind of the relationship between the two organizations at that time. If you can go to the next slide. In June, actually in May of 1999, and a little bit earlier, there was noticed some things happening near the 18th hole. The project had been already developed for the most part. At least the golf course was finished. In fact, in March of 1999, I actually attended a Michael Douglas and Friends golf tournament there. And I remember sitting on the edge of the 18th hole and watching the golfers come, and sure enough, a few months later, the 18th hole was gone. But interestingly, we have some photos here These are kind of the first few signs of what was occurring back in May and June. This is a golf cart path along the 18th hole that has been lifted, and so you're starting to see the first signs of what was going to happen with the landslide. This was actually a sand trap within the 18th, along the 18th fairway. You can see the cracks within the sand trap itself. Just some noticeable signs that the geologists started to be concerned and then started informing the city, hey, we got some cracks going on here. And then now here, this is actually on June 2nd of 1999 when the landslide actually occurred. You can start to see the failure of the 18th fairway as it moved towards the ocean. It was actually about 17 acres moved towards the ocean. If you can go to the next slide, basically destroyed the hole 18 and other areas around hole 18, including hole 12. I guess an advantage, it created some new real estate in the state of California as the slide moved into the ocean. But at the same time, it created this basically large depression. You can go to the next slide. You can see this was actually a sand trap that was up at the same elevation and just fell in. Go ahead, move forward. This is a good representation of what they call a horseshoe graben. Basically, this area went all the way around, connected ocean to ocean, and left a piece in the middle that was pretty much at level ground. If you can go to the next slide. Another photo gives you a really good idea of what occurred. You can go to the next slide. This was an article in LA Magazine that, if you remember that photo at the very beginning where you had that tractor, well, that's where the tractor ended up in the bottom of the graben. And the next slide. With that, the current property owner, which was Ocean Trails at the time, and the Zuckerman family actually decided what they were going to do is not abandon the project, but to repair the landslide. And they thus began a process of moving forward to repair the landslide. And this involved working very closely with the city's geologists, their geologists. We had weekly meetings that had 10 geologists in a room discussing how the landslide should be repaired. What was the best approach to do that? And what they came up with is they did come up with a plan that involved moving about 1.5 million cubic yards of earth material. It involved removing the bentonite layer, which the landslide failed on. It involved installing shear pins to hold some of the land that was still there that they were not going to touch. And it eventually restored and rebuilt the 9th, 12th, and 18th holes, and involved the construction of a new lake, which is lake number 9, which was actually replaced. All of this was within a year period of which meetings were held between the city and the owner on a weekly basis to discuss this approach. And finally, 1 year actually to the date or to the month, the city council actually approved the landslide repair plan, which is here. I'm not going to go into it, but it was a fairly complicated plan of, like I said, moving about 1.5 million cubic yards of earth material. I don't know if you have anything to add on the landslide repair. Maybe we can go through some of the photos. If you can flip to the next one. This photo you can see it's actually taken from a resident's home within the Ocean Terrace condominiums, and it looks back, and you can see in the background, if you can see, is the very large dirt piles, and you may have noticed that during the time when this landslide repair was being constructed. That's the stockpile in which they were basically digging out the bentonite layer that was there and digging all the way down to the bottom of the bentonite layer and stockpiling the earth material. Go to the next slide. This is one of 6 slot cuts that they were doing to repair the landslide. They basically dig down to the bentonite layer, store the earth material in that big stockpile, and they'd move from slot cut to slot cut. You can keep going, next slide. Pretty intense grading operation. It took, I believe about 2 years, about 2 years total to do this grading operation. You can move forward. Again, you can see this is all being dug out here and stockpiled in various locations. Keep moving forward. This is actually the edge of Founders Park, and this is the point at the end of Founders Park, and so this slope you can actually go out there and see today. If you move forward. Again, another shot, the clubhouse, Founders Park in this area. Part of Founders Park was affected by the landslide, and that slot cut at the end helped restore that part of Founders Park. You move on. Again, you can see the sheer walls that they had to cut to do part of these slot cuts. Move forward. Again, Founders Park up here and digging down into the bentonite layer. To move forward. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Again, Founders Park up here. Move forward. And as I mentioned, part of the design was to hold a large portion of the landslide that they were not going to touch. And so this involved actually doing shear pins, which were drilled down, 100 feet or so, and that would hold the bentonite layer and keep that part of the land moved. They installed about 100 shear pins. It's a drill bit installing the shear pin. If you move to the next one, that's actually the shear pins being installed. And if you move forward one more. Basically, here's your end result. All of this right in here was all of the construction activity. This is now the 18th fairway. This is all the construction activity that I just showed you through the slides. This trail was impacted. Now we have the trail going all the way through it. I'm not sure if many of you have walked that trail. It's a very beautiful trail now. And the 18th fairways, it turned out really great. You can go to the next slide. Another shot of the 18th fairway. And maybe next slide. And another shot of the restored golf course. So I'm not sure if you have anything to add on the landslide repair.
If you go back a few slides, Gerald. There's a few shots of there you go, the drill rigs. And the excavation for the landslide, removing the bentonite layer, was over 100 feet. And there were 100 shear pins that were installed. And the pins were 36 inches in diameter. The side walls on the pins were about 1.5 inches. So as you can imagine, we're dealing with very large steel pins. And those pins were set in place at different depths that were specified by our geologists and the city's geologists, and they were grouted with concrete. So you can see by the size of the rigs, if you go back a couple shots, Gerald, so you can see from even this photo here, the elevation of some of those pins, the depth that those pins are set at. And essentially what we did is we built an underground retaining wall to retain the slide and essentially backfill it to get the grades very close to what they were originally. And then in turn, we rebuilt hole 18 and hole 9 as well. So that's just some background on the what was actually involved in repairing the landslide.
The repair of that landslide, it was probably an amazing approach to doing this, and the amount of work that it took for both the Ocean Trails Organization, the bank, and the Trump Organization, who eventually finished the landslide repair, was a tremendous amount of work and a lot of cooperation between the city and all three organizations. Some of the lessons that I think that we have learned from the city and how these apply to future projects are the importance of being able to work together and identify the issues at hand and actually work to solution. Identify, where do we want to be and how do we get there? And we worked very closely. We met on a weekly basis, reducing. I know another lesson that I learned is reducing the confrontation that could happen by just simply agreeing to disagree on certain issues and try and move past that. And of course sharing a common goal, which is the completion of the project. I believe that we still share that common goal and find that this project still is not completed yet. There is still half of the project that is still undeveloped, or the residential lots, which needs to move forward. We both understand what the goals are to complete this project and the importance of moving forward. And we're working very closely to do that. I know that I probably spend a good portion of my week, at least 2 or 3 times, talking to somebody from the Trump Organization about either implementing these 650 conditions or where we're going in the next step to get this project finished. I believe that concludes my part of the presentation. I don't know if you gentlemen have anything else to say, or...
Yeah, I'd like to, just to follow up on what Greg was saying about the conditions. It was 650 conditions were outstanding when we purchased the property. So as you can imagine, working myself, Greg and I worked together daily on these conditions, and they involved, some of the conditions were minor, some of them were major, like Greg commented on the realignment of PB Drive South. Many of the conditions also involved the public access, the trails, the signage, the beach access, things like that. So working through the conditions took several years, and many of those were really complicated. So we worked very closely with the city and had a great working relationship, and we were able to get all of those conditions complete in order to get the golf course open.
Dave, you have...
I think it's just important to note that, you know, we all, certainly the city and the Trump organization, certainly the golf course, share a common goal. You know, we recognize our role in the community, and we like to think ourselves as an important neighbor in the community. You know, my relationship with the city has been very brief, certainly, but I know it's gotten off to a very positive start, and I would call it very constructive, certainly, and very cooperative. And so, you know, we look forward to moving forward, as Greg likes to say, and getting some things resolved regarding the project, but making sure it's done in the city's best interests and your best interests as our neighbors, and certainly in the Trump organization's best interests. So, again, we certainly have a great spirit of cooperation and certainly teamwork. We are certainly partners in this together. So we look forward to much of the same and a lot of improvements moving forward. Thank you.
I think with that, if there's any questions. The question was, who currently maintains Palos Verdes Drive South? The Trump organization was responsible for constructing it, but actually who maintains it? And currently that is the Trump organization. Well, there's not, it's an interesting issue. That's one of the issues that we have to work out, because actually there is not a maintenance requirement of maintaining that part of the project. The Trump organization is required to maintain all of the open space lots and habitat areas on the project site itself. But actual Palos Verdes Drive South, there's not a condition. One of those 650 conditions doesn't talk about maintaining landscaping on Palos Verdes Drive South. Currently, the Trump organization is maintaining that. They installed the landscaping, they're maintaining it. But I believe that there probably will be some sort of agreement between the Trump organization and the city in the future. How thick is the bentonite layer? Well, that's a good question. I'm not a geologist, but it's just a few inches, actually, believe it or not, and that is the slide plane that actually that landslide, which we call Landslide C, there's actually 3 ancient landslides on this property, A, B, and C, and Landslide C failed exactly where we knew where the failure would occur, that there was a bentonite layer. That's why we were allowed golf course to be on there as opposed to residential lots. But it's actually only a few inches. And the problem is it got wet, or that's usually what happens, and that's what makes it slip. The question was, are the shear pins acting as an underground retaining wall for the landslide? In essence, yes, they are. The shear pins were designed, there was a block of land that moved, but pretty much stayed there, and they wanted to keep it there. They did not grade down to the bentonite layer and remove the bentonite layer for that block. Everything just moved around it. And so what they did to make sure that that block would not move in the future was to put the shear pins into the ground, basically penetrating the bentonite layer. So in essence, you know, you have a shear pin on either side of the bentonite layer, so it basically would keep it from moving. That's the purpose of maintaining that block where it's at. The question is how confident are we that this will not occur again, basically, or a landslide will not occur again. Like I mentioned, when the project was first designed and developed, there were 3 ancient landslides identified, A, B, and C. The boundaries of those landslides were identified. The geologists were well aware that those were ancient landslides, and that those could fail. The golf course was designed so that it would only be golf course areas or recreational areas on the landslide, so no residential structures or clubhouse structures or so forth would be constructed on them. That's how the project was designed. How secure can you be about making sure that it's not going to happen, where the geologists spend a lot of time in investigation in doing that? But unfortunately, something happened, and Landslide C did fail. What happened after that, though, is the city council took a very proactive approach in saying, well, look, if this failed, what's going to happen with A and B? We need to look at those in a lot more detail. And subsequently, that started actually a lot more review, and in fact, we're still doing that on landslides A and B. And in fact, that's why the development on that side of the project is not finished yet, because we have not finished our geologic review and analysis on that side of the project to make sure we address that issue. With landslides, you can't predict if they're going to fail or not. What we can do is put in monitoring devices to give fair warning, and there are a variety of monitoring devices on this project, both that measure ground movement as well as water monitoring that measure whether or not there's water getting into the bentonite layer and so forth. So we can only do that much, is at least trying to predict if there's going to be one, and then analyze the heck out of the ones that are there to make sure that it's not going to cause an impact. So that's what we've done. So. The question was, were earthquakes considered with this project? And yes, when they do a geologic analysis, they do consider earthquakes and the impact of earthquakes upon land movement. I know they do that as part of their analysis.
The question was, is Mr. Trump going to be building a home on the property? And there's currently a home under construction. Is that his? Mr. Trump has tossed around the idea of building a home on the property. The home that's currently under construction is Lot 10, and that's actually a home that was pre-sold. So that's not his. That's a home that we recently sold that we started about 2 months ago.
The question was, Mr. Trump has made some comments about the golf course becoming another Pebble Beach or one of the best in the world, and how are we doing with tournaments and whatnot. I think we're progressing very nicely. We're currently ranked nationally, according to Golf Magazine, in the top 100. We're ranked as the top golf course in the state of California by 3 Western golf publications. Objectively, Pebble Beach will always have a pedigree, and will always have a history. But you'd be amazed how many times we have golfers come off the golf course and say Pebble Beach has nothing on us in terms of beauty, playability, even challenge. One thing you will find as you think or talk about Pebble Beach is they do have a number of holes that you would consider as common. Now, they have wonderful holes along the ocean, but they do have some that are common, and we just simply don't. Right out of the gate, you have a hole with a $2.5 million waterfall right behind the green, which, even contemporary or former standards with building a golf course is the first hole tends to just kind of ease you into the golf experience, not overwhelm you. Just kind of it's a golf course architect's way to just kind of get started on the golf course. Well, meanwhile, we have one of the most beautiful opening holes, most challenging opening holes in the world. Even the first hole, Pebble Beach, is just a common dogleg right par 4. As it relates to tournaments, a nice thing about the facility is that we offer not only some tour events. We have had the Michael Douglas out. We did have the LPGA out. We do have, obviously, a lot of corporate events, but you'd be surprised how many charity events we have as well. And with those events, we also have a lot of celebrities who come because they believe in the cause so much, whether it's Salvation Army, YMCA, Boy Scouts, LA Free Clinic, you name it. We have approximately 60 charity events a year. We, as notables go, we have a lot of celebrities who come, whether to frequent the site, to play golf, or to enjoy the dining experience, or to take place in a film or movie shoot. One nice thing, and then I'll let the question go. I got a call 2 weeks ago from the marketing manager domestically, the U.S. marketing manager for Nike, and she said, David, we want to bring Tiger Woods back. We want to bring him back 2 days this year, and you're our first choice on the entire West Coast. Tiger likes to come back not only to the West Coast, but preferably to California, given this is where his roots are. So I think thus far we're accomplishing the goals that Mr. Trump has set. And our new tagline, if you will, is the golf experience of a lifetime every time. And that is certainly what we're looking to accomplish. The question was, are there any plans for a heliport? Not to my knowledge, no. And I'll pass the baton to Greg here.
I know from a city standpoint, if they are planning to put a heliport in, they would need to get an amendment to their project because right now the conditional use permit prohibits a heliport at this time.
Sure. The question was, can we comment on events around the facility that are not used for the golf course and around Founders Park? Well, certainly, and the first one to come to mind is the Concours event. And it's interesting. The gentleman just mentioned a few minutes ago Pebble Beach, and I think for any car enthusiast, especially who's familiar with the Concours event, Pebble Beach is known around the country as being the consummate Concours event. So that is another thing that is certainly on our list of things to do so that we can help close that gap and ultimately meet Pebble Beach in the stature of their Concours event. So that happens every September. We look forward to having it back the weekend of the 19th to the 21st of September this year. We did have a very successful Super Bowl party in early February where some monies went to charity, and that event we hosted about 900 people. It's important to recognize that Founders Park is a wonderful resource for the community. I can think of fewer, more beautiful parks out there, at least in the immediate area. And then we have a beautiful grill outdoors. We have some outdoor seating with some views of the park. We have restroom facilities and the walking trails. So those are always available. If you're looking to have a private function at Founders Park, you are welcome to contact us, and you can work through us towards that endeavor. But it's also important to note, too, that we are happy to take suggestions on other uses or other activities or events at that park. We've thought of July 4th activities. We've thought of a random concert or two, obviously in conjunction with the city, to make sure we can do that, and we won't impose any noise. We won't get any noise issues or whatnot. But one thing about the facility, and I'm sorry if I'm a little wordy, is it's a very exciting time for the facility. With me being new to the position, we have a new food and beverage director, new executive chef. You'll see a lot of change going on and a lot of improvements going on. And again, any ideas you may have, certainly for other events, we're happy to entertain them. We're excited about what the future holds. Sure. The question was, I think, in relating to the affordable housing, how many families live on site? As Greg mentioned, we do have 4 homes. They are occupied. We have 2 individuals that are living there without families, and then 2 individuals who have families with them. The question was, with Terranea opening up late next spring, early next summer, what will the relationship be like? Will it be a healthy one? Will there be cooperation? And will there be access to the golf course from their guests and those who may have fractional ownership there? We're very excited about it. I think, if anything, as I think of the community and how the community has been somewhat small over the years, and with Trump National Ocean Trails opening and now with Terranea getting ready to open, it really represents seemingly, I'm not from here, a marked change in the community here. All of a sudden, Rancho Palos Verdes becomes a destination, and I can't speak on behalf of the city, but it must be an exciting development. Certainly, it represents, again, a big change. We think that we will complement each other, and in regards to Terranea, perfectly. It establishes their resort as a true destination, just as it establishes our golf course as a true destination. We've had so many people call about where can they stay. Where should they stay? Do you have packages available? We actually lose some outing business, charity and corporate alike, because there's really no place close to stay where we would work in conjunction with a resort. They will have shuttle service available to the golf course and back, and we're already working with our marketing team on just making sure they know how open we are to whatever groups they may have, individual players they may have, and whatnot. I think it's for both of our facilities, it's a wonderful development, and it's exciting for us, and it should be for the community. There was 2 questions. The first one I can handle. The second one I may pass off to Greg about the traffic. The first question was about the current state of the economy and how it may be affecting our business levels. The second question was about some studies regarding traffic flow, given there is one road that goes by Trump National and soon to be Terranea, and obviously the world's not getting any less populated. As far as the economy goes, the golf business in general, January and February has been soft, and so we're obviously going to be no exception. That said, as our numbers go, without the rain, we would have been very close to our anticipated budget. But as you all know, it was a very wet January and February for us, especially compared to 2007. You know, we are hoping that we are walking, talking examples at Trump National of you get what you pay for. That is very much my role as we discuss changes and the excitement going on at Trump National. We are revamping and improving every bit of our customer service and every bit of our presentation. And again, as you enjoy the dining, and for any golfers out there, as you enjoy the golf experiences, we hope you perceive that. We hope you feel that and taste it, if you will, as you go in to eat. And if you don't, please come see me. But it's for me to sit here and say, geez, we're not affected, you know, we're above all that. We're not. I mean, the economy is what it is. But so far, we're doing okay. I mean, it's one thing about the golf course is there are very few of our stature around us. So if you're a visitor into LA and you're looking for a great place or world-class place to play, no disrespect to any other golf course around us, we just believe that we offer something a little different and a little more special. So for those visiting LA, we're still their place to come. And 1 second, Cecil. I know we've got a question about the traffic.
In regards to the traffic, before this project was approved, there were traffic studies that were done to analyze the project. In fact, of those 650 conditions, there's quite a few conditions that actually address potential traffic impact issues. The Trump organization, or actually this project, was conditioned to actually address even as far as the intersection at Western Avenue and 25th Street, where the property owner actually had to give money to the city of Los Angeles to improve that intersection or make improvements to that intersection either now or in the future. So when you look at a project like this, you do look at traffic impacts. Luckily, with this project like this, the traffic generation isn't extremely high. There's only 59 residential homes. It is a golf course project, but you don't get quite a bit. Terranea does end up with a higher traffic generation, and they as well had to do traffic impact analysis and do mitigation to address those impacts.
I was thinking it'd be not just.
Hopefully it'll be okay. There were traffic impact studies that were done. They did require to do mitigation to address the impacts, whether that's intersection improvements. You notice there's a new signal at Terranea, and roadway improvements, trail improvements, and so forth. So hopefully that will address the issue. I'll speak at least for what I know from the city. The Trump organization was looking at, or Mr. Trump was looking at, a proposal to take those lots that are located a little bit higher than the clubhouse. They're right in front of the clubhouse, between the clubhouse and Palos Verdes Drive South. Taking those lots and converting that to a villas type program, and yes, making it more of a visitor serving type product. They did approach the council with that. The council said, well, you can move forward with this. It's going to require a general plan amendment and so forth. The Trump organization does need to deal with some geologic issues on that side of the project, so I think that has kind of slowed them down. I'm not sure, and I don't know if Scott or David is aware of the plans for those villas, if they're still planning to move forward, or if it's just on hold for right now.
The plans are currently on hold for the villas right now while we continue to resolve the geology in that tract.
The question was, thank you very much. This woman was saying that she's liked the food at our restaurant and was expressing even concern that we have somebody new at the restaurant. Yes, we do, ma'am. We have a new food and beverage director. He's been there about a month. His name is Brian Wolbers. We work together in Ohio, and he's now come here to work here. And we have a new executive chef. He was actually just named yesterday, Chef Garrett. He was the lead sous chef in the kitchen for over 2 years. So he will bring with him certainly some traditions that you're used to from our menus. But you will also see, when I say a lot different cuisine, we're going to be changing up our menus, if not every month, on a seasonal basis. Definitely keeping our favorite items on the menu, but having some changes. For what it's worth, we haven't changed our menu in years, and it just needs some fresh items on it. But yeah, as you have favorites, they won't go away. What degree of difficulty is the golf course was the question. It is much more difficult than your average bear. It is very challenging. Mr. Trump likes a good challenge, especially regarding golf courses. So when he did the redesign of the golf course, he made sure it keeps your interest. So the one thing I like to say about the golf course, though, is it's very inclusive. If you're not a long hitter, There are 5 teeing options to choose from, so you could pick your poison. You can go all the way back and play it where, you know, even Tiger says it's an awfully difficult golf course, or you can play a more forward tee where the yardage is very palatable. In addition, there aren't a lot of forced carries on the golf course, so there aren't a lot of hazards that you have to carry. You know, you can chase the ball up to the green or onto the fairways on most holes in case you don't hit the ball, you know, terribly far. So it is difficult, but if you can keep the ball straight, I'll tell you what, it's a very playable golf course, and it certainly won't bore. The question was if we have caddies and carts. We actually only have carts. Yeah, the carts have GPS on them. I know it's still not the same as walking the golf course, but we've just found that there are a lot of distances between holes that would be a little arduous for anybody, whether you're the marathon runner or otherwise. And the golf course is so stunningly beautiful that we would hate for somebody as they're walking along to not be able to fully appreciate the amazing vistas. So that's the predominant reason why we don't. It's just between a lot of holes it gets to be a little bit of a hassle. Correct me if I'm wrong, there's up to 5 miles of trails. Is that overstating it?
I think it's
About 5 miles of trails there. So there's plenty of places to go there and get lost and kind of take a look around and enjoy the beautiful environment. So, and again, we have restroom facilities for the public, both at the clubhouse and a satellite facility close to where we have a public parking lot. And we have our grill open during the day where you can sit down and enjoy the beautiful vistas with a nice sandwich or a beverage. So it is certainly a place where, you know, we'll get comments from those paying our top weekend rate. They'll be surprised when they see surfers or picnickers or whatnot in the park down there, and they'll be surprised to eat. We say we're actually very proud of it. It gives the facility more of a community feel. You know, when somebody thinks of Trump National, and a lot of times they think it's private or it's so expensive, well, gee, it might be kind of stuffy. Well, we're certainly not that at all. We certainly believe in providing good service, but having that park and having the community amenities there just does make it feel, again, a lot more like a community.
I also just wanted to mention about the trails. The one great benefit about this is there's a lot of public parking for these trails. Just at the bottom of the hill on Ocean Trails Drive, when you enter the project, just to the east side of the clubhouse, that parking lot is reserved for park and trail use, public only. So, and then there's also a public parking lot at the end of La Rotunda that accesses all the trails as well. So there is a lot of good public access and parking for these trails as well. The question is how is some of the lessons that we've learned on this project carry forward to other projects in the implementation or development of other things within the city? I'm lucky. I'm in a lucky position in that I'm serve as the planning manager for the city, and I manage all the planners. And so, what the things or the lessons that I've learned about cooperation and working to find solutions, I pass on and instill on all of the planners that I work with. And so that's kind of a common thing that I drive into them is, look, you know, if there's not agreement between property owners or neighbors, let's work together and see if we can find solution, hopefully get solutions to problems. And so I really direct my staff in that manner. With projects like Terranea, when you have the large development projects, we really focus on meeting with the developer. I know that the project planner on Terranea meets on a weekly basis with the construction management team to ensure that they're moving forward in a good direction. And if you see that project is going up really quick, and that is a result of those meetings, making sure that we identify these issues, any issues ahead of time, and move to solution. And I think it's really benefited in those learning lessons of the importance of cooperation and working together and finding a solution to the problems.
We're here at Founders Park with Greg. From the lecture, you talked quite a little bit about Founders Park. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure. Founders Park is a park that's a little bit over 5 acres. It's a publicly dedicated park that the Trump organization and the prior developer, Ocean Trails, constructed. It was actually dedicated to the city in January of 2006, and that was actually the first event that was held here, was the actually dedication ceremony. Founders Park, the name comes from the actual dedication or in honor of the founders of the city who worked very hard into the incorporation of the city of Rancho Palos Verdes. The park is a publicly dedicated park. It's open to the public. There is a 50-space parking lot that's available for access. It is available from dawn to dusk every day. The park is it's a wonderful park because it's held for many events are held here. The Concours d'Elegance event was held here. Other events by the Trump Organization, as well as private events, can be held here. Weddings and other ceremonies by the public can be rented into the park and held here as well. The park is also access to many trails throughout the Trump project, including 2 trails on either side of the end of the park which access the beach below. And that's actually a really wonderful little trail walk that you can do. It takes about 20 minutes. You can walk from one end of the park to the other and all the way down to the beach. And it's a very beautiful trail. So it's a wonderful site.
Let's go have a look.
Here we are at Founders Park at one of the monument signs within Founders Park. It's actually a point of historical interest that's been dedicated through Sacramento. The site actually acknowledges the first Japanese-American farm on the Palos Verdes Peninsula and is in honor of the Ishibashi family and in recognizing all of the farming that was done here on the peninsula. Here we are at the eastern edge of Founders Park, and as I mentioned, there's 8 miles of pedestrian trails throughout the project site. What we're looking at now is one of the pedestrian access points down to the beach. There's actually 4 access points down to the beach from the Trump property. This trail actually goes down to the water's edge, and at a lower tide you can actually walk around the point of Founders Park to another trail that comes up the other side. It's a very steep switchback trail, but it is a nice walk from around the point. Here we are at the southwesterly end of Founders Park, looking back up towards the clubhouse. And as we mentioned before, what's really a nice amenity to this whole project is all of the parks and trails are maintained by the Trump Organization. In fact, with Founders Park, there is a publicly accessed bathroom located at the lower level of the clubhouse that the public is welcome to use. All of the public trails are maintained by the Trump Organization, and as we can see here, this is one of the trails that leads from the end of Founders Park down to the beach. It's one of the 4 access points down to the beach. This is a more steeper switchback trail that's a little bit more difficult to manage, but it does drop you off right down at the end of the beach, at the end of the point, and you can take this trail on a low tide around the point and back up another trail back up to Founders Park. It's a very nice walk on a low tide. As we spoke in the lecture, this is the landslide area that occurred on the 18th hole. Back in 1999, when the landslide failed, there was actually an 18th hole here, and which was affected by the entire landslide, as well as to my left here, hole 12 was affected as well. In 99, when it fell, and you saw some of the photos in the lecture of the damage that was done, and the repair effort, which was again about a 1.5 million cubic yards of earth material had to be moved around in order to repair the landslide. Now what you see here is the finished 18th hole, the finished new 12th hole upper to my left, and then also some improvements to the lake. The trail over towards the ocean is the new public trail that was installed, which is now open to the public, and all of the habitat area that you can also see between the 18th hole and the public trail is all new. Some of the wonderful advantages to this project are the amount of public spaces, both in open space and public trails, available to the public in the project. There are actually over 8 miles of pedestrian trails and 4 miles of bicycle trails throughout the project, some of which you can see here along the bluff's edge. The bluff edge along this project in the Trump National Project has actually been dedicated to the city for the most part, or will be in the near future. You can see the amount of habitat that has been planted along the bluff edge. And there's actually over 65 acres of dedicated habitat preserved with this project and 40 acres off-site. As we're panning around and looking at the golf course, you can see the fairways, and what's planted between the fairways is also additional habitat. The project was required to have up to 20 acres of habitat planted between the fairways, serving as linkages between the various open spaces on the project. Now, this actually shows the extent of the habitat that's been planted in between the fairways of the golf course. The Trump Organization was required to plant over 20 acres of habitat between the fairways. The habitat has been successful in providing a linkage between the open space preserve areas where there's other habitat located. It's also been successful in increasing the amount of gnatcatchers on the property. There are over 20 pairs of gnatcatchers on the property today, whereas when the project was first, before it started grading, there's actually only a few pairs of gnatcatchers. One of the most important aspects of this project, both to the city and the California Coastal Commission, is the public's availability to the project, not only to the golf course and the driving range, but also to the trails and the public parks. The public is available to access all of the public trails and parks, and over my right shoulder you'll see the public parking lot. It's a 50-space parking lot that's open from dawn to dusk and is available to all those that wish to use Founders Park and all of the trails that are accessed through the project. Here we are at the driving range, which originally back in 1992 was the site of 27 residential building pads. In 2004, the Trump organization decided to convert 16 of those residential building pads into the driving range itself. This is a great public amenity for the city, its residents, and the community, as the driving range is a publicly open facility. Of all the public amenities within this project, there are 3 park sites. One is Founders Park. There are also 2 entry parks, one called Vista Catalina Park and the other one known as Sunset Point Park. Sunset Point Park being approximately 1.5 acres and Vista Catalina Park being approximately 1 acre. Both parks provide the entry to the site of the Trump National Golf Club, but also provide a lot of amenities to the public in the way of trails, drinking faucets, as well as picnic benches and other benches as well. They both offer fabulous views of the coastline, including Catalina and the sunset.
Greg, thank you for meeting us here at Founders Park and talking about the cooperation between the Trump organization and the city and showing us what it's like today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been wonderful showing off this wonderful project. This project's been through many hurdles over the last 10 years, 2 different property owners, and trying to get this project moving forward with all the public open spaces and trails. And it's wonderful to be able to show off how wonderful this project is today and the availability of public access. It's also, I'm glad to be able to point out the importance of how the city has cooperated so much with both property owners in seeing this project through, and how we're able to take that, the lessons that we've learned from this project, especially in cooperation, and take that to other projects and seeing them through. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for watching Peninsula Senior Lecture Series. I'm Betty Wheaton. See you next time.